Hello, everybody. Yeah, I'm coming to you live from my backyard, so you're probably going to hear everything from the wind to the sirens to my dogs barking or whatever happens on my show. I'm Jonathan Bengal. Thank you for tuning in to Naked Tax Talk Raw, where babies we bear down to the naked truth about who we are, about our personal lives, monetary lives, and of course our business lives. Because what I know to be true is that when we improve upon the self, the business, which is a reflection of who we are, also gets better. And as a result of that, the money, which is a reflection of our business and ourselves, also increases. And when you work with someone like myself, an IRS enrolled agent and a certified tax planner, we make sure to help you to make more money while still paying less taxes each and every year. I'm always asked, Jonathan, why do you have to show up on your show naked? And the truth is because nakedness is what cultivates courage. I'm super, super excited to be joined today by Susi Vine. I just freaking love her. I love her name. I love what she's all about. And what she is like my last guest last time, but this one's also got a slight different twist on it. It's about helping us to move into a new direction about the way that we see life, the way that we feel about life, and ultimately how to what she calls the positivity of psychology. So, without much further ado, I'd like to welcome Susie Vine to Naked Tax Talk live with me right now. I'm doing this on my phone. So, welcome, Susie Vine.
Hello, happy to be with you. Happy to join you. It looks like poolside. I love this outdoor experience.
Isn't it fantastic? So, I mean, I do live in Phoenix, so the weather's perfect now. So, it's fantastic. Cheers. Cheers to some late afternoon coffee or
Cheers.
wine, or I don't know what we're drinking. So, Susie, tell us a little about who you are and what you're all about.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you. I have created the company 3x Less Stress and the podcast Happified. It's all about living life with less stress and more flow. And I am a huge advocate. I want everybody to join me in this mission to put happiness first, because there is
Yes.
evidence in this field of positive psychology that when you are happy, you are more successful. And happiness isn't a guilty pleasure. We're also more socially engaged. We become change agents. So there's so many reasons why happiness is important. And I'm not, a blind optimist. I don't advocate being happy and ignoring our emotions. So that's what I do in my work with clients, is help us. We recognize that we can be authentic and we can choose our mood. We can start to call in our emotions and have a lot more power in the outcome that we're creating. And so I start the conversation around stress because we've all got it, and it all comes down to how we step up to it.
It's like this big, like, S word, right? Stress.
Oh.
Oh my, talk about stress. I've dealt with some stress today. In fact, I even made a Facebook post. Right now, listen, if you are a tax professional or an accounting professional or a bookkeeping professional, I highly recommend you stay away from Intuit products. I'm just throwing it out there because I made a promise that I told the managers that I would tell the world at the shit that they do to business owners. So I'm telling you right now, as an influencer, you want to look for an accounting product that is not owned by Intuit. They will seize your accounts. Your employees won't be able to be paid out. It's a nightmare. So just word of caution. Speaking of stress, but what I wanted, and I'm still angry. So you brought up a great phrase. If I may quote you, I freaking love this. And you said, happiness isn't guilty. Oh, oh, like that's like
Permission granted.
like I don't know how else you do that. Like, so like how in the world did you figure out that happiness is not being guilty, or it's not about being guilty?
Well, so as we're going to dig into, I'm pretty new as a business owner. I've been doing body work and massage, and last March that all was off the table. So the coaching aspect of my business, which is really why I changed direction 5 years ago, came front and center. And I finally put focus on it. So 3x less stress is about turning down the volume and stress so we have more capacity for resilience. I thought I had it dialed in. And then I was introduced to the work of Sean Aker, a researcher at Harvard. He's got a phenomenal TED Talk. I highly recommend it. And he is doing research to validate the power of happiness. And a lot of times people are like, no, no, no. If you're not angry, you're not paying attention, right? Do you remember that bumper sticker when we were
Yes.
young? Just to date
Yes.
ourselves. Sorry.
Don't date me. Don't date us.
I'm sorry. You don't remember, but I remember.
I don't know about you, but I'm barely like, I just turned 18. I don't know what you're talking about.
You're hardly legal to be by that pool.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. So he's proving that happiness actually has a direct correlation to more
Yes.
like more abundance.
More abundance. We're better at sales. Doctors are better at diagnosing. We are more receptive to criticism, positive feedback, but our perception is more open. We're better able to see opportunities and possibilities. We don't have the blinders on like we do when we're working in stress.
Yes.
And they're validating this. It's so exciting. So that's really where I've turned my attention. So I still focus on dialing down the sneaky stressors, but my passion is helping people feel empowered that we can change our mindset about stress.
I like that. So, like, what's like when a client is, and I know this, I did this today, right? Because I've been dealing with Intuit for a week now, okay, for the record. So, the stress level, like you just said, actually did put blinders on like this. But I will say though that I'm a little bit more aware of how things are operating. So it's more like this, but there's still blinders, right? There's still blind spots. But like you see, like I can still, right? How do you help clients to recognize when they're in that state of stress and then to pull out of it?
Yes. Everybody, different tools work for everybody. But one of the first things that I try to start putting into people's practice, people's awareness, I call it the pause and pivot. And so when you feel yourself getting stressed out, to find that opportunity to pause. And this doesn't help when you're on the phone with Intuit and you want to just bring them down. You got to start out small, like somebody cuts you off in traffic or the news is pissing you off. And pause and get curious. What am I responding to? Is it this, or is this triggering something else? Is this calling back something and I'm maybe a little irrational in my response? So get clear with what you're responding to in that pause, and then you have the opportunity to pivot and start to get clear. What am I feeling? What would I rather be feeling? What kind of outcome am I working towards? And what it does as we practice it, right? Neuroplasticity, we start retraining our brain to have this response when we're fired up. Then it gives us the opportunity, we're coming out of that reflexive stress response, and we are bringing ourselves back into our prefrontal cortex where we have power in this moment.
That's what I'm talking about because you know what? I have to let you know. So, people who have been seeing my show or know me, I've been working on self development really hardcore for like the last almost 2 years. And so, this whole week, right, going through my drama with all of Intuit and everything, um, today, when I came home, first of all, I was also having internet problems with freaking Cox at the office, which is why we're here at my house on this location versus my studio. So, anyways, I was like, you know what? I'm done. I'm gonna go home, try to get some work done, blah blah blah. So I come home and I sat down. I'm a journaler, so I don't know if that's a stress release technique or not, but I like to
Absolutely.
write stuff down, right? So I started asking this question, like, why was QBO on my nerves? Why was Intuit really pissing me off? And I think that's what you're talking about. It's like that pause moment of like, okay, what's really going on? Then I figured out it's because I'm more upset with the fact that they impacted my clients. And so it pissed me off more than anything. So then I also realized that subconsciously, I was also afraid that my clients would be like, Jonathan, you're shit. Like, you didn't do shit for us. Like, you're blocking us. Like, it's your fault. And so that also infuriated me even more. And I will admit, when I got on the phone with a few of these peeps, I kind of let the gas go. And because I was frustrated, right? And I think that's what you're talking about. Is like, wait a minute, let me respin this. Let me rethink about this, process it. And then I went, okay, well, my clients, they're like, it's okay, JB, we're going to find a solution. That's what I did. I actually spent and found a solution to the problem. Thank goodness, right? That's what they pay me to do. But I also was like, oh, I guess I didn't really need to be that pissed off. And so it helped to calm me down. Otherwise, girl, you and I would be having a full on shouting match probably right now.
I know. Sometimes it's fun to indulge in the rant. I get it. I love to jump into a good rant sometimes too. As long as you recognize, right, that you're spinning this up and it isn't like your go-to reaction. So yeah, I'm
Yes.
glad we don't have to have that conversation, and they probably deserve to get called out because they're putting a lot of people through this kind of stress. But we're not escalating, we're de-escalating. So yeah, that's a
Yes.
powerful recognition. That is huge because what it comes down to is you don't want to do wrong by your clients and you don't want to be seen as not doing your job. And you know,
Right.
that resonates with everybody. We're doing our level
Right.
best, you know. The last thing we
Yes.
want is to be accused of something that isn't true.
That's true. So how did you go what did you do before we specialized in, by the way, this looks like three times less stress. Like there's so many in there. Like I want to like Z out. I want to be like I want to like relax. So I maybe that's your intention. But before you were doing this, like what were you all about before? Or was this the thing you've always been trying to do?
Well, my mom's a nurse for 40 years. She's retired now.
All
And
right.
when I was a kid, she said, when you grow up, do anything you want. If you go into medicine, I'll disown you. So I went into theater and I
Ah,
worked backstage in theater for 10 years. I painted sets and built props. I worked at the Santa Fe Opera. I love the Land of
oh,
Enchantment, your
me too. I was
hometown
born and raised.
almost.
Yes.
Yes. And I loved it. And the chemicals in the shops toxed me out. Oh, let's get fuzzy on the math. I recognized
Yes.
how much the chemicals in our environment impact our health. And what
Oh.
else am I going to be when I grow up? So I
Ah.
bounced around a bit. My last work before I was doing this was managing moves for seniors. So all of our clients were in their 80s and 90s. I helped them downsize from typically their family home they might have been in for 40 or 50 years, get rid of all the extra stuff that we hold on to and carry around, and
Yes.
move into a smaller space. So it was a really emotional situation. I got to hear all the great stories, but without almost any exception, they all felt that they had lost their independence. And
Oh.
it was almost always because of a health issue, their own, their spouse, or they lost a spouse, someone had dementia. And I loved supporting them. And it was a super stressful job because it was like on call around the clock. I get a call. Where did you put my ex? I don't know. I remember the other 49,000 things I moved, but I don't remember that. Um, Selfishly, I realized that I want to have more options when I get to that point in my life. I think the rest of
Yes.
us do. I'm a member of
Yes.
Gen X, and we might not be loud. A lot of the people in our age range don't even realize that we have our own generation, but we do, my friends. I'm here for us. And
Yes.
so the lazy way to be healthy is to make the small changes now before we have to make a hard change because of a health issue. And so that's my soapbox. That's my flag.
That's interesting you say that. So, you brought up you actually brought up three really cool parts, 3 points. Um, and the first one I wrote down is holding on to things. And I
Me
will guiltily
too.
admit I do. Like everything that is somehow in my world has some type of like if it has an emotional attachment to it, oh girl, that is hard to get rid of. I
Yes.
still have my pen pal letters all the way back to high school, for goodness sakes. Like what? Or my mom, like she's watching my show by the way right now. This is her right here.
Oh.
So she's a big fan,
She's calling you
and
out. Or is she calling
yeah,
herself out?
she's like amen to all of it. She says, God bless you, honey. Right. So my mom watches. So my mom, like, she sent me, thank you, mom, by the way, she sent me a box of I would you call like the trinkets of my youth. And so it
Mhm.
was like a piggy bank and a Bible and the things like
Oh,
your
that's got to
childhood
go in
was.
your office, your first piggy bank. Your clients want to see that, honey.
I did not consider that, although we were too poor to save. But yes, I did not think about that. So it's interesting you said that holding on to things because when I walked across the
Mhm.
Camino de Santiago, the lesson I learned,
Mm,
I had to learn a lot, but the
that's
one
on my
lesson I learned,
list.
oh, you got to do it. Oh, you got to do it. There's no, you got to do it.
Mm.
So I'm carrying this backpack with like about 20 pounds worth of crap. And you start to throw things away because you realize how heavy life is. And so I started realizing like I don't need to hold on to all of my memories. But I will tell you though that I have a lot of things that if they have a little memento memory to it,
Mhm.
hard to get rid of. I can only imagine what your clients felt like to be like,
So hard
ah, and then the stress you would have had to gone through
to
because
sit
you're kind of,
there and talk them through it.
yes, oh my gosh,
And
that
I'm
is
on the
okay.
clock, so the numbers are going behind their heads. And what I hear is, still both spouses are there. They won't get rid of anything, right?
Right,
I'm not the one that
right.
has the problem. They have the problem. They won't get rid of anything. So,
Yes, oh my goodness. Then I loved what you said. The other thing that brought this up was this loss of independence. And that strikes a nerve with me for somebody who doesn't have kids. I do wonder as a gay man who's married obviously to another man, like, will there be people out there that will take care of me in my older age? So these are valid questions. And then you said the last thing, well, you kind of, all of this is summed up in the word of aging. And
mhm.
if I may share, and then I want you to talk on this because I can talk a lot, um,
Okay.
is I learned that for me, universe has always sent me. I love the way the French say it. They say plus âgé, which is like old, like more aged, right? So they're
Mhm.
older, and I I've always been around people who are always 10, 20, 30 years my senior, and have learned from them. So I can at least admit to that part, right? And it's interesting because you're kind of in that same idea, aren't you? That same world of like, I see what you're going through. So, what are some of the techniques that you're sharing with your clients now that may be gearing them towards that older age of I've got to let things go. I got to get used to the idea of
Mm.
losing my like are you doing that? And if so, what are some of your techniques that maybe you'd be willing to share?
You know, I don't formally address the clutter part. A good friend of mine, Mel Mason, does. She's phenomenal, and I connected with her while I was still with that company before I became an entrepreneur. I've been a very good employee for a very long time. This entrepreneur thing is a little hard for me to get my head around. And she introduced, like, really brought home the concept. Like, and I'm sure doing our personal development work, we come across this process: as above, so below, and as within, so without. We get clutter when we haven't cleaned up our inner junk. And
Oh
so
man.
that emotional stuff that we hold on to, we need to demonstrate it somehow. She was actually on the Hoarders show as a support kind of like personnel, not as one of the key
Oh,
figures.
okay.
And I did some training with some hoarding response teams in the Encinitas area. I live in Southern California. And what really lit something up for me in that regard, in terms of clutter, is hoarders are not lazy, because you have to work really hard to live in a home that reaches that state. But what usually triggers it is an emotional loss, that devastation that
Mm,
someone might experience, whatever shape that may be. And then the way that they exhibit control is by not letting go of anything.
interesting. Which makes
Fascinating,
sense. Which it
right?
makes a lot of sense. Like I don't. Yeah, that makes a perfect sense. To not let go is to control. Ooh.
Yes. So that's a big part of it. And her practice, and I pick up little trinkets and jewels everywhere. She advocates the power of now. She went through a huge life story, has really brought herself around, and just does phenomenal work. But it's not meditation. You don't have to get into the formal meditation of it all. The power of now, and just give yourself space, give yourself 5 minutes a day and build on that. And so that's one of the things that I advocate too, is starting small, and presence, meditation, connecting to your breath. That's one of the fundamental tools that when we start to incorporate that it creates more space in our lives.
I love that. I really do. Like you said, connecting to the breath. When I first started out as in my Buddhist practice, that's the first thing we learn is to tap into the breath and allow it to feel it as it comes in, feel it expel, and then you layer that, right? So then you start layering, okay, that cool sensation. Imagine it's positivity, it's abundance, it's everything that's positive that's coming into you. And then all the breath going out. Imagine you're letting go of the negativity, you're letting go of the weight of your world. By the way, so my mother, I want to give a shout out to my mother-in-law, who that's my very favorite mother-in-law right there. Her name is Roberta. She's my husband's mother. So she's also one of my big fans. So she's watching, tuning in right now. And my mother just said, I'm getting older. Mom, I forget how old you are. You don't have to tell us, but I know she's in her 60s. And she says, I'm getting older and not as feeling as well. And I can't walk fast like I used to. That alone has got to create a degree of stress. If my mother was
Mhm.
your client, what would be your, like, one little tip that you would say to her? This is something you should do as you're approaching that older age to help you cut your stress.
I would say first, give yourself grace. Understand that we are hard on ourselves. We are our own strongest critics. My mom is a lot like that too. And we all learn lessons, right? It's easier to see things outside of ourselves than within. And it's hard to learn to give ourselves grace, especially once we get set in our ways. Also, start where you are. Don't let that discourage you from getting out and walking as you can. My mom's having some knee surgeries. That's why I'm up here in Oregon instead of back home in San Diego. Life happens. And, also the things that we can do to clean up, not only our space, our emotional stuff, but the food that we eat, the water that we drink, and the comfort food. I am home and eating the comfort food, honey. I'm off my diet. And I don't advocate like being on a diet, but the way that I
Right.
like to eat. And I'm
Yes.
a real big advocate of eating the simplest manner of food, getting the whole foods that you can, because antioxidants, phytonutrients really bring down inflammation. It can be really helpful. But, the way that we've all been in this last year, it's so stressful. It's hard to get out to the grocery on the regular. We're just not eating as many fruits and vegetables as we were, even if we were really great on that before. So I'm an advocate of doing what you need to do to make it happen. So I use greens powder to get my fruits
No,
and veg, right? I'm not
I've heard of
above
this.
cheating when I need to. Yeah.
I heard about this. Let me ask you. So, who is your ideal client? Who's that person that you would say you would make a great partner in terms of a partnership? You, the client, me, the coach, helping you to excel in your life.
So, like I mentioned, I love jumping in where we are in Generation X. So that's between 40 and 55. If you don't know us, you will. We're just not as loud as the generations on either side of us. Because where we are, we're kind of the sandwich generation at this point. Our parents are starting to have some more health issues. The kids are getting
Uh-huh.
out of the house. We're redefining who we are and what our priorities are. So, people who recognize that they want to be healthier, that they want to have an active, resilient lifestyle. They want to keep doing the things that we want to do. We want to go walk that Camino de Santiago in 20
Hmm.
years, not just next year, right? And so we know we want to keep having all the choices and have the options and enjoy the adventures. So how do we do it? And where I help people is I just help them cut through the noise, because I think a lot of people look at, okay, I know I need to be healthier, but is it keto or is it paleo? Am I supposed to be vegan? It's not broken enough. I don't need to fix it. I will come back to this later, right? We don't have the time because we're stressed. That's the
Yes.
one of the primary complaints that I have. So people who recognize they want to be healthy but think it's too complicated, that's where I want to jump in and say, let's simplify this. Let's do what matters. Let's start making space for bigger changes and build on those wins.
So I'm gonna call up a particular issue here, and that is we're part of the what we would call the coaching, the speakers, the authorship world. And so, out of curiosity, do you have like an online course people can come and take partake of yours? Do you have a book? Do you have any of these what we call assets in our businesses?
Assets. I launched a membership in January because I think it's
Woo!
really important to have community with shared goals. And we might not see that in our inner circle, but we can find that community. And so that's what I'm creating in my Velocity membership. And so that's linked on my podcast page, which is linked on my website there. So it's getting its legs. I'm calling in the community. So everyone is welcome.
Yes.
There's a free level to jump in. And on the third
Woo!
Sunday of every month, I host a reset session on Sundays. We talk about a topic. There's time for Q&A. We do a little meditation. And then the free membership level, you get a guided meditation, a recording you can tune into. And then for really not much at all, you can get weekly content, topics, and more guided meditations, all the juicy stuff. So you get it on drip, because what I kept hearing from people, I developed an online course, but people who have stress don't have a lot of time. So let's make it digestible and applicable. And so I came back around because this is what I feel like people are really looking for.
This is great. So listen, if you are out there and you're like stressed to the max, then you've got to connect. You must connect with Susi Vine, the best name in the world. I really love your name,
Thank
Susi
you.
Vine. With 3timeslessstress.com. That's the number 3x lessstress.com. Go over there, explore her page, get to know
Thank
her, what
you.
she's all about, enter her world, because I can tell you, like, just your energy alone is very contagious, and I love that. And I don't know about my viewers, but I know I kind of want to be part of that world, and I want to enter that. So I will be checking out your world, and yeah. So if you're watching either now live or later on, whenever you watch my show, tune in to 3timeslessstress.com with Susi Vine. Now, Susi, as you know, I always say to my guests, when you come on here, I want to know if you have, and now is the segment of my show where we now flip the script.
I just want to
And
admire puppy Cameo. Hi, puppy.
oh, this is Marley. So let me see. I'll get her real
Marley.
quick. This is Marley. She's
Hey,
one of my.
girlfriend.
I used to have 5 dogs, and 2 of them have since passed. But I think now I learned the term the other day. I was watching the Groomer show, and I guess they had them do like your heart dog. I guess they call it, which is like your soulmate as a dog. So unfortunately, my soulmate, her name was Rhodey. She passed away in December of
Mm.
19. Blaine's soulmate was Coco Chanel, and she passed away in June last year. So we were left. Our friend, he could not have his doggies. So about 3 years ago, he basically lent us his dogs. They're now permanently ours. But this is Marley. She's actually a pulley. So technically, if her hair was to grow out, she's supposed to look like a mop. But we just
Oh,
keep her
she's
nice
one
and
of
trim.
those. Rasta
Yeah,
dog. That's why she's Marley.
she's a total Rasta dog. Yeah. Oh, I never put the two and two together. So she's been with us for a few years now. She's one of my older ladies, so she's a lovely dubby, as you can see.
Hmm.
And then over there in the pool area, I've got Lucky, who's in the t-shirt. I don't know if you can see that. I can't because I can't see the camera. And then
Yep,
I've got
yep.
his sister over there. That's Lady, and they make up my kids. They make up my
Your fur
babies
babies.
here. My fur children. So now's the time to talk about a little bit of taxes. So
All
I
right.
know now's the opportunity to get some free info because, girl, let me tell you, I charge for this shit. So, what questions or question do you have of me?
Well, as I revealed, so I am into this entrepreneur. I have fought so hard for so long to avoid entrepreneurship. I do great work for other people. Nobody ever wants to see me go. All of my bosses, like, they buy me gifts. I got a hot air balloon ride from one. They're
Oh,
amazing.
nice,
I know, it
nice.
was great. Highly recommend. So I'm right this tax season, I'm a W-2 employee
Okay,
and I'm starting a business.
lovely.
And my husband has his own business. He's been doing his own taxes for years,
Okay,
feels very competent at it.
love
And so
it.
my question for you is this: how do we make this transition gracefully? Does it make sense for us to file together? What should I know as I dive into this world? And I've been
Well,
investing a lot in growing my business too. So, I'm a little
love it, and
fuzzy on what I can claim.
love all of that you're saying. And I will start by first prefacing and saying that I am not giving you legal advice right now. And the people tuning in and listening to this portion of the show should not be construed as legal advice or tax advice for that matter. But just based on what you shared with me, and I don't know your details of your life. If we did, I could give you more laser answers. But here's what I can share. There's 2 things you brought up in this conversation. So the first thing you brought up is this thing called starting a business. That was the first thing you said. The second thing that you brought up was kind of like the smooth transition, like how do you keep it going? And this concept of, maybe do you file together? We call that jointly, we file separately, that kind of stuff. So I'm going to kind of cover three main educational points if I can. Let's see if I can do this. So the first thing I want to talk about is the idea of startups. So this is where you're at. So every startup business, Uncle Sam says, "Yes, baby. I am so happy that you are taking charge of your life and that you are stepping into your own power and that you're willing to take this on, this risk," right? So the first thing he wants to do is he wants to reward you for taking on this choice. And so that's why I wrote my book, The ABCs of Deductions, an entrepreneur's guide to tax write-offs, because it's a great place where we dive into the deductions that Uncle Sam says you can take if you're a business owner, and there's reasons why we can take it. Now, you're a little bit cool in the sense that there's a lot of startups recently. COVID really changed a lot of the way we do business, a lot of startups. So here's what Uncle Sam says, and this is very important. Okay, very important, not only for you, but for everyone else. When you start up your business, Uncle Sam says, congrats, but I'm not going to just let you go on up and roll up in a Rolls Royce right away just because you can. All right. I want to make sure that what you're going to do is going to really be successful because he understands that when you have a loss on your taxes, on your business, it's going to reduce your taxable income and thereby reduce your tax bill due at the end of the year. So he's not going to let you take 100% of the risk in the get go. So this is what he says: Susie, congratulations. So I want you to take into fact that you've got two types of startup costs. So you have the first thing called organizational cost. These are going to be fees directly related to hiring the attorney, or like us, to form your legal protection, the corporation or the LLC, right? It's going to be the cost to hire the accountant to get your chart of accounts built out, get your books set up, right? So that you do it right from the beginning. It's going to be the application for the LLC formation or the corporate dues, right? Or the licensing, whatever those preliminary costs. We call that organization to organize you so that you can do your thing. The second type of expenses he calls startup expenses. Oh, that's easy. Startup expenses, which is basically all of the other deductions that you're taking. So it's going to be the advertising, it's going to be, setting up your dues and subscriptions. It's going to be all that stuff that you got to lay out in the very beginning of your business. And so Uncle Sam says, Susie, here's the thingamingy. So the lawyer's fees, the accounting fees, and the LLC fees, all of that, you cannot take it as 100% deduction. You instead have to do something what we call amateurization. You got to take a little chunk of it every single year for 15 years. You're going to get a little piece of that. He also says that's true for your startup costs. So all those advertising and all that energy you're going to put into, right, to tell the world you exist and everything, you're going to amateurize all that too over the course of 15 years. All right. Now, there is a provision in the law that I'm not going to go into detail here that allows us to accelerate a portion of those startup costs in year one. So the question then is when do I get to tap into 100% of the deduction, right? When is that? When does that occur? And so Uncle Sam says that up to the point where you open your doors and you have that grand opening sign printed out on your doorstep, right? Like grand opening, we're opening today, or when you acquire your first paying client, that then unlocks the opportunity to deduct all of your startup costs from the get go. So, did I leave you in confusion, or so far, how does that sound?
So you're describing the period from when I begin putting it all together until my first paying client. That's the
Yes.
period at which
You're going to
everything.
amateurize a
That's
chunk of
amortized.
that over 15 years. So let's make math easy. you spend 15 G's, 15 grand on everything, right? You're going to only be allowed to deduct on your tax return $1,000 over the next 15 years until you reach your first paying client. Now, not to confuse you, but that startup cost, it's still going to be amortized over 15 years, but all of your expenses moving forward after your first paying client now is 100% deductible. Limitations do apply, and I'm not giving advice.
Of course. Do some research.
Do some research, god damn it. Check out publication 545 if you want at the irs.gov. So that's kind of how it all kind of boils down. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's really helpful.
So it sounds great. And like I said, there are some provisions in the law that allows us to accelerate. I do talk about this in my course, Rapid Tax Savings Formula, which I'm super excited to let you know that we're launching our 5th edition starting April 30th, 3 p.m. Pacific time to 5 p.m. Pacific time. And I limit it to just 10 entrepreneurs at a time. And we've already had, I think we're up to 18 graduates of the Rapid Tax Savings Formula course. And so I just know that I would invite you to check it out as well as the viewers and my listeners to check it out. You can find it at jonathanbangle.com. And it's really a great space where, like what you just experienced with me right now, Susie, this is what I do in a teachable moment with my students over 5 weeks.
And there's a lot of moments that come together.
A lot of moments. So I think you had asked me, I don't know if I forget if you asked it live, but I know you preliminary asked me this question in the intake form, and you had mentioned about marrying, filing jointly and
Mhm.
separately. So I'll address that question. So when when you're not married, Uncle Sam says you're single. That's the obvious, right? And so we go about our daily lives being single and mingling and filing our taxes single, right? The moment that we get married, the moment that we get married, Uncle Sam says everything gets doubled up now. So double the exclusions, double the credits, double the this, double the that. Everything gets doubled up, which makes sense. Think of it as two big water droplets that come together and forms one big droplet, right? So that's how it looks at it. So what happens next is Uncle Sam says to you, as a married couple, you're always going to file married unless you tell Uncle Sam, we want to file separately. Now, fun fact, before Trump signed his Tax Jobs Creations Act of 18, all right, Uncle Sam was approved. He actually still kind of is. And he basically said, listen, you want to file separately, you're married and you want to file separately, we're going to penalize you. So in a way, Uncle Sam is actually living in our bedrooms, right? By this mere idea. He's basically saying, if you're going to be married, but you're going to be, having affairs, basically, right? Or you're going to be separated. You're not going to, right? He doesn't like that. So he basically says, you're sort of going to use the single stuff. You're sort of going to use the marriage stuff. And we're going to decrease and increase shit in different areas of the law to penalize you for filing separate. So Trump kind of changes that because we know the kind of man that he is and loved his affairs and loved his ability to do different things. And so he and his cronies purposely designed the law so that now in 2021 or 2020 for this matter, if you file separately, the sting isn't as bad. It still stings you a little bit, but not as bad as pre 18. So, what I will tell you is that as new tax laws come out, because they're always buried in every law that gets passed, there's always a tax law that's attached to it. So I can guarantee you that with the new administration, right, they are
Mm.
gonna they are gonna reintroduce these penalties for filing separately. When, who knows, but that will probably come out in years to come. So The issue here is married filing or separately. Now, the second thing, as if that sounds like two things, the second thing that you got to watch out for is the relative known as the anti-state, right? So anti-Arizona, anti-California, or Uncle California, right? These other relatives. So what happens is that these states have their own rules when it comes to filing jointly or separately. And so different states. So for example, like in Arizona, I think in California, we operate something called common law, right? Common
Hmm.
community
Hmm.
common law, right? And so basically the states say, I don't care if you guys file separately or jointly, but even if you file separately, we still have to account for your spouse's income. So there are some issues at the state level you have to consider when you're looking at filing jointly or separately. Now, I will tell you, when we sit down with clients, like my doctors that we just recently onboarded, actually, it's a playground facility, we're about to save them $250,000 in taxes. All right. Now, what we do in that scenario is we looked at, do they file jointly or separately, right? That's something we look at because interestingly enough, sometimes filing separately benefits the taxpayer. But if you just do it loosey goosey, like, oh, let's go to a Intuit product called TurboTax and get you in trouble and you end up paying more taxes, Lord knows I help clients out with that too. If you go to something like that and you're like, oh, I'm going to file married filing separately, if we don't understand all the ramifications, it can end up costing us more in the long run. So it's all about planning and being as strategic as possible, even at its basic foundation, which starts, I do it again, shameless plug. Actually, it's not shameless. Today's episode is brought to you by the ABCs of Deductions. Um, by ABCs of Deductions, it starts there with the foundation so that you can continue to make decisions and make profits. So how does that sound? Like how does that talk about your stress levels and that's what you do.
Like, ooh, homework. But it's great food for
Yes.
thought. It's really helpful. And it's interesting at how quickly and how often things change, right? To your point that they're
Yes.
sneaking these little riders in to
Mhm.
every bill that they pass.
Mhm. And that's what makes my job and many other tax professionals like myself, especially people like me who's a certified tax coach and a planner by the American Institute of Certified Tax Coaches. There's brought to you by that too. Um, we spend close to about 100 hours a year on always maintaining that education. And as an IRS enrolled agent, which is licensed by the federal government to practice before them to represent you and many other taxpayers, we are required to maintain a high level of education. It makes sense, right? Because the law is changing. Like, I hate to say it, but moment by moment, just like real life, everything is changing like real life. Even in tax law, nothing is permanent, just like in life. Susie, before we depart, we've spent 43 amazing minutes together. Before we head out of here, do you have any last parting words of wisdom for the viewers and the listeners out there today?
Well, it is tax season, isn't it? Keep
Yeah?
breathing. Breathe. When we read our email, we stop breathing. Whatever it takes, set reminders to get centered, to check in. And I loved what you were saying about the power of just tuning into your breath and how much awareness you can get from that. So, so powerful. So don't feel like, oh, I need to get centered. I have to go figure out how to meditate. Just connect to your breath. Remember to breathe. Make the most of it. We will get through
That's
this
it.
together.
Yes, take a breath, take a moment, and give yourself permission, as you said earlier in the show, give yourself permission to calm and to pivot and to change the way that we think about life. And Susie, before we leave, I'm going to pull up my journal. I call them my magic books. And I want to actually read this out loud. This is coming from my journal, so my personal thoughts are always written down. And there's a testimony to this. So I'm going to read this. I wrote this on February the 5th of 21, and I was going through some difficult times battling with, marketing and clients and the whole kit and caboodle. And so I wrote the following sentences. There isn't a God. Seems like I was allowing myself to fall for that old trap. I am God. I have to dig deep to find my inner faith and keep from going mad. I am having hard times being patient. People continue to dot dot dot. I know what I have to do. People are eager to give me their money so they can tap into my brilliance, intelligence, and knowledge of all things taxes. Women entrepreneurs invest millions of currency, the dollar, the euro, the many more currencies, to give them my understanding of happiness. Money flows to me, bringing it with it happiness. So much money, I feel secure. I have hundreds of students eagerly taking my course, all of them fulfilling their own dreams. I am amazing. I am valuable. I am humble. I am kind, smart, brave, strong, confident. I am valuable, miraculous, enough. I'm also grateful. I am aware, a teacher, a husband. I am a boyfriend. I'm a lover. I'm everything. I am who I am. And Susie, last month in February, I was struggling with this idea of take, take, take from me. I guess you could say my energy was depleted. When I rewrote that frame of thought, like you just saw, I wrote that. When I rewrote it, girlfriend, let me tell you, the month of March, we hit my wish. My wish in December was to make $60,000 in gross revenue by the end of the first quarter of 21. And I can tell you, we hit that mark. So it proves that when we shift the mind and we say, you know what, instead of being negative Nancy's, right, instead of being negative, if we flip the script and what we
Mhm.
just did, what I just did, it opens us up to receive the abundance, what is there, and it allows the people who love us and value us to step forward and to allow us to change and transform their lives. I'm Jonathan Bengal here, host of Naked Tax Talk, where we bear down to the naked truth about who we are, our businesses, and of course our money. If you enjoyed today's really cool, awesome episode, I highly encourage you to hit the subscribe button, and I also highly ask you to hit the alert button. But more importantly, share this with the people you know, with your tribe, so that they too can learn and step into the power of who they are, the badass CEOs we were born to be. I'm Jonathan Bengal, and until next week, maybe, maybe not, I don't know, my show's raw. We will find out something new that the universe brings us. Thank you so much, Susi Vine, for being our guest. One last time, in case they fast forwarded to the end, it is www, 3 as in the number 3, x less stress.com. Until then, auf Wiedersehen, adieu, and until we see each other again.